Hey guys, welcome back. This week we're going to discuss what grooming is and whether the government is really doing it to us. There's been a lot of conspiracy theories recently about our government's COVID policies. All the mask wearing, all the social distancing, all the not going outside or inside. And the conspiracy theory is, look, the government's just grooming us to be subservient to the New World Order, some world government, or some tyrannical police state. And while I don't think this is true, I think there is a truth to what the conspiracy theorists say. Not in what they mean, but I think this is a great discussion about grooming, what it is, and what we can learn from it. And I think we'll answer the question whether the government is grooming us. Yes, there's Twitter. What made me think about this? So there's this video on Twitter of these teenagers slow dancing at, I don't know, some canteen, some school dance. It was difficult to say, but they were slow dancing back to back and their arms were interlocked. Like one of them was about to lift up the other one, as a way to crack your buddy's back. And there are a lot of comments saying, oh, this is grooming. It might be grooming, but probably, again, not in the way that people think. I think the first thing to look at is how grooming works, or what it is, what predators do, sexual predators, emotional predators, narcissists, borderline people, sociopaths, what they do to groom people. First of all, in a sense, they groom everybody. What they do is they just put out a bunch of tests to a lot of different people, and the people who respond well to those tests, they know, okay, this is somebody who is going to be more likely to allow me to abuse them and not say anything. And what these tests are, in a sense, is an infringement in a boundary or a personal space. Now, most people that, let's say, a sociopath would test, they're going to go, whoa, that's weird. And kind of step to the side, metaphorically speaking, watch them go by like, ooh, I don't want to deal with this person. But somebody who perhaps has been victimized in their past, most likely by their parents or a trusted caretaker when they were a child, when their boundaries are infringed, part of them goes, oh, okay, this is normal, or this feels comfortable to me, this is what I know, especially if these issues are unprocessed. So I'm going to stick around this person. It is comfortable for me. The predator knows, okay, this is a person who I can abuse, and the victim, or the eventual victim, knows this is a person who's going to abuse me, which I kind of like in a weird way. Of course, this isn't victim blaming, but it is important to see the emotions involved in these predator-victim scenarios. It's not black and white. There's a lot of nuance there. And in a way, you can make the argument that the victim, or the eventual victim, kind of wants to be victimized. Not consciously, of course, but wants to be victimized because that's just their emotional state that they're used to. Like the power state of the predator is the emotional state they're used to. They're both, in a sense, acting out their respective secondary emotional paths. And of course, what's important to know about this grooming process is that it's not conscious. Predators, sociopaths, narcissists, they don't make a plan and say, I'm going to treat people in this way, and if they respond in this way, like a computer algorithm, or like a line of code, then I'm going to abuse them. It doesn't work like that. It's this unconscious acting out, like the victim's response is an unconscious acting out. In the sense, what they're both doing, again, emotional payoff. They're both distancing themselves from what I would argue is their, primary emotional issue. And we see this process play out a lot. People who have been abused in the past. I mean, what's the number one determinant whether somebody's going to be abused in the future is that they were abused in the past. And boy, they just always seem to find somebody who abuses them. Now, people who haven't been abused, and you ask them about any sexual predators, they'll ask, what are you talking about? I mean, it almost never happens. But if you have been abused, you just seem to find these people, and it almost seems like this magical, psychic, weird, etherical, woo-woo kind of process. But when we understand how emotions work and how we act out emotions unconsciously, it's inevitable. It's going to happen. Abusers and the abused will find each other 100% of the time. Just enough iterations, enough interactions with enough people, you will find each other, and you will stick with them for as long as that feels comfortable for you. There's this a great example. I mean, and I'm not saying that this photo is grooming, but what grooming would look like, especially a an adult grooming a child. If you've never seen it, or never been privy to some of these stories, there's an old photo of Stephen King smoking a cigarette, and Drew Barrymore, I think this must be the 80s because Drew Barrymore looks, I don't know, 7 or 8, a child. And she's lighting his cigarette. Now you could say, okay, this is all promotion for a movie they were doing about a pyromaniac. I'm not calling Stephen King a pedophile. I'm not saying he was grooming Drew Barrymore. But that is a good indication of what an adult would do to a child to groom them. I mean, it's kind of inappropriate, especially by the photo. You can see there Stephen King's leering at this child, Drew Barrymore, in a strange way that just kind of makes your skin crawl, if that isn't normal for you, which for most of us it isn't. And then a child lighting your cigarette, there's just that's something that an adult would do, right? That's a flirty thing, a mildly flirty thing that an adult would do. Now, of course, you could say, oh, well, Mark, you're just being conspiratorial here. That there's nothing strange or adult or sexual about it. It's just somebody lighting somebody else's cigarette. And that's where I go, come on. Now, I'm not saying that Stephen King's a pedophile. I'm sure he isn't. There's no evidence that he is. But I am saying that is a good indication. Just to give a concrete example, if you want to look it up, you can probably find it on Google Image. Drew Barrymore lighting a Stephen King cigarette. Just a good indication of what may be going on. Did something just happen? I think it paused. Anyway. But this is how the government works. I mean, that's the point about the government. There is no conscious conspiracy to say, ooh, we're going to spread COVID-19, or no, ooh, now that COVID-19 is happening, let's test the public. Let's test the public, see what they're malleable doing, or see what we can get them to do, see how they are malleable in ways that we typically wouldn't expect. Ooh, let's get them to wear masks. Ooh, let's get them to social distance. That's not how this works. But if you are in government and part of your part of your living, part of your livelihood is gaining power. Power is an addiction. You will just find situations in which you can use, you'll use any situation to gain any kind of power you can. That's how addiction works. If you're an alcoholic and it's raining outside, oh, what a great time to drink. If you're an alcoholic and it's sunny outside, oh, what a great time to drink, right? It's not about the situation, it's just about using the situation to get your fix. And in the case for a lot of politicians, is the power fix. I saw this interview with Nancy Pelosi. I don't know who was interviewing her, but she said something to the effect of, we feed people. Just the presumption of that. The arrogance of that, saying we take money from people so we can feed them, like she's the one doing it. I mean, that is honestly, that's what an abusive parent says to a child. Look at all this stuff that I do for you, even though it's stuff that you're either not supposed to be doing, or it's stuff that you really can't take credit for because it's not you doing it. So I guess the question is the government grooming us? It's really up to us here. I mean, why are children easily groomed? Because they have a very difficult time putting themselves first. They can't, right? They can't interact with the world on their own. They have to rely on adults. So if an adult comes in and abuses them, they're going to be much more likely to be groomed because of that. And that's why we are being groomed unconsciously, I would argue, by the government. Not the government's fault. This is just what people in power do. They look for more power. It's our issue if we have a difficult time looking at our own needs when when somebody tells us to wear a mask everywhere and we can't go outside, or we can't hang out with our friends. That's our issue, right? That is something that we're willing to accept without any real evidence. Or shutting down the economy, same thing. I mean, we all remember back in March. Of course, we weren't saying this. We were all on the up and up, and we knew where the shutting down of the economy was headed. But everybody seemed very willing back in March, if we all remember, to shut down an economy. Is that the government's fault, or is that our fault? Right? We're adults here. We're not children. And it's really important that we take responsibility for our own needs, so we aren't groomed, or we're groomed to a much lesser extent by people who could potentially abuse us. And that's what we work on here at Animus, just looking at our emotions what really causes them, how to be aware of our emotions. So when somebody tries to infringe on our boundary in a way that just seems kind of weird, like the Stephen King, Drew Barrymore picture, it's just kind of weird. Yeah, I just don't like it. You can trust that. You can trust where that's coming from. And you don't have to shut that down for the sake of fitting in, for the sake of doing what somebody else wants you to do, just because you don't want to cause a fuss or you don't want to have a confrontation that's uncomfortable for you. You can look at your needs, look at your, I would argue, usually it's your anger. You manage the anger, and then putting your needs first in a healthy way is what you'll naturally do. And I'll leave it there. Thank you guys for watching. Please like and subscribe. Tell one friend. And remember, people in power, people in the government probably are grooming you, but it's up to you whether it's going to work.